All right, I'm going to be level with you to all those autistic parents out there who love their child so much, who are trying absolutely everything. But you reach the end of the day and you think, man, I wanted to work on communication today, but life just got in the way. There was those speech exercises I was meant to do, but they came home with homework, or they just kept on talking about something that I couldn't understand. But I know that happened at school. School was probably exhausting for them. I bet at least some of you had appointments that you had to get to. Maybe there was a meltdown for a significant portion of you. I know myself, I experience meltdowns daily. Maybe you were just simply trying to get everyone fed, dressed, and into bed after having a very, very busy workday yourself. And maybe by the time the house was quiet, you were about to put on a show. Maybe you hadn't even eaten dinner yet, but you're already thinking, did I do enough today? Did I do something to push that needle forward for my child who is struggling so much in everyday life? That big question that kind of eats away when you lay down to bed at night. Am I doing enough? Is this enough? Is this enough to change what their future might look like? And if you've ever had that thought, and I'm going to share with you, I absolutely have those thoughts. I want you to hear this. I want you to listen to me, because when you're like navigating everyday life, you're talking to all these different specialists, you're on your phone and you're looking at all of these people saying, so parenting, this will damage your child. People feel like they need to do more. They need to feel like they need to pack so many things into the day. You need to be thinking about all these different things that you have to do with your child. Otherwise, they're going to end up maladjusted or struggling or naughty. But in my experience, actually, sometimes doing less is really what moves families forward, is really what makes life easier, is really what makes things much calmer for the children, but also for the parents as well. So I'm going to get into some things that parents of children who are autistic really need to stop doing, because they are unintentionally making communication harder, but also kind of winding that energy up and making days more difficult at home as well. So I'm Eloise. I've spent over 15 years working with autistic children and their families, and I've coached hundreds of families all around the world. I'm also raising my own family, and I have a very similar journey to all of you. So I have that unique perspective of knowing what's going on professionally, but also personally walking this journey as well. I know that feeling of like every interaction matters, to wonder whether you should have waited longer, said it in a different way, not said anything altogether, asked a different question, handled a meltdown differently, or squeezed in one more learning opportunity before bedtime. It's a lot. It really, really is a lot, not just kind of physically going through the motions of the day, but that mental load and that pressure of making these small decisions that actually have big outcomes for your child in the moment. The good news is, improving communication isn't necessarily about turning your home into a therapy clinic. It isn't about buying all these sensory toys and swings and, I don't know, like building things. Whatever. In fact, some of the biggest breakthroughs, and often when I'm actually starting to work with a family, I am coaching them to do less, not more. I'm telling you this now, is less. It's about doing less, especially at the beginning when you're trying to make changes. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share 4 habits with you, just 4 habits that you may be doing that you should really be more mindful of changing and developing, because these 4 habits are typically what is getting communication stuck at home, but also, like I said, creating that difficult energy as well. None of them cost money. None of them require extra resources, but together they can absolutely change that quality of conversations that you have with your child and start building that foundation in their brain for communication. Okay, so let's jump in. Number 1. Okay, I'm just going to be blunt. I'm just going to say it. You're probably talking too much, right? If your child isn't talking much at all, that silence can feel really, really uncomfortable. Now, before you click off and say, oh, Eloise was offensive. I want you to hear me out because you do not need to fill every moment of silence. The best thing you can do is learn to feel uncomfortable in that silence because that is where you're giving your child space to grow. So let me give you an example. You ask your child a question. It would be, what do you want for dinner? Or are you hungry? Simple question. They don't answer you. Or they say cocoa melon because that's where their mind is at. You ask the question again and again and again. And between these questions, there's not much time. It's, oh, what do you want for dinner? Are you hungry? Are you hungry? What would you like for dinner? They don't reply. So you rephrase it. You say it in a different way. Then you might add a clue and another clue. And then you might answer it yourself. And all of this has taken in the span of like 10 seconds because you're busy, you want to get dinner started, and you're just trying to have that moment of connection with your child. And listen, we've all done it. I've done it too. Especially in those moments when I'm tired, when I'm rushing, when I have like that mental load of everything that I have to do during the day. And I just want that answer quickly. And really, what this boils down to is autistic children need much longer to process language than we think. So let's now look into what is going on cognitively every time we ask a question. So first of all, your child has to be in a place where they can hear your words, right? Many children are distracted. There's background noise, there's a fan, there's, I don't know, another child like playing in the corner. They have to be able to hear your words in that moment and be attending to you, which I can tell you can take quite a lot of cognitive power to do, right? Sometimes that is really hard to pull their attention to one thing when there's a lot going on in the environment. Secondly, they have to take your words, what would you like for dinner, and turn that into a mental representation, right? What would you like for dinner isn't really a concrete question. It's fairly abstract, and there are many, many, many different answers that could be given. So it's not necessarily a straightforward question that, say, what color is this balloon would be. There's a lot of cognition and thinking that a child needs to be doing. Then the motor systems and the language retrieval systems need to kick in. So that motor system is going to be important for planning how all of their muscles in their face, in their jaw, in their mouth is going to say the words, which can be very difficult for an autistic child. In addition, the child then needs to find the right words to match what they want to say. So finding that word for maybe they're picturing, I want pizza for dinner, but finding the word pizza or finding the word for the toppings that they want. That word retrieval process can be difficult and challenging. So after all of that, which is a lot of work, especially if at any one point in that kind of process, it is challenging or difficult, it is going to be hard for your child. Their brain is working a lot every time a question is asked for them to get to a place where they can answer that question. So it's already hard. Now imagine someone is interrupting you every 3 seconds as you're trying to get through that process. And I don't even need to tell you how that feels, because if you are a parent and you are watching this and you've been in a place when you've been trying to cook dinner or pack a bag for the morning or think about a shopping list and you have a child that is constantly interrupting you, you know exactly what that feels like. You know what it feels like to lose your train of thought and then have to get back there. It is hard. It is really, really hard, but it is also frustrating and off-putting. So if this child is not only having to do something hard, but is then getting frustrated because they're being interrupted, this becomes a task that they don't want to do, right? This task is too overwhelming. They don't want to do it. So I hope I haven't made you feel bad if that is what you're doing. I just want you to fully understand what is actually going on, like beneath the surface, because this is one of the easiest things to fix. It is so simple. You just have to practice waiting, practice being patient. And if you're a parent, navigating the journey of bringing up an autistic child, I 100% know that you have patience by the bucket load, right? This whole parenting journey is about learning that patience. So I'm not talking 2 seconds, not even 3. The goal is to wait 10 seconds for them to answer or before you start asking again. And sometimes what I do is I count in my head if I need to, but I also use that time because now suddenly as a parent, you have time, you have 10 seconds, which is actually quite long when you're just standing there. I use that time to think, okay, what is my next question going to be? Let me look at them right now. Where do they need my support, right? Maybe they need your support with attention, right? Maybe you're waiting 10 seconds and they're not going to answer because they're looking everywhere and playing with a toy. That's going to give you a clue as to how you should respond next. Maybe you give them the 10 seconds and they're trying to find the right word, but they can't. So maybe next you're thinking, okay, I need to help them with that word retrieval. Do you want pizza or pasta? And you give them those options. Maybe you see them struggling with that motor part of speech, right? They're like, they're like groping with their mouth. Okay. So maybe you give them an AAC device or you prompt them to say the sound and then you let them know that is that pizza or pasta and let them have that choice. So like I mentioned, this is going to feel weird. It's not going to feel natural, but understanding that your child's brain is processing language different to you is a really big step in responding the right way. That silence isn't going to be empty. Their brain is going to be working, but also hopefully your brain is going to be working during that time as well. All right. So number 2 is where I'm going to elaborate a little bit more as to what I just spoke about in number 1. And that is being able to respond to the response your child is giving you. So big picture is stop asking the same question over and over again, right? Rule of thumb, if you've asked it 2, maybe 3 times, depending on whether they're attending to you or not, that is too much. They're not going to answer the question. They're going to shut down. You need to change your tactic. And this is incredibly common. I do it myself at home if I slip into this bad habit. And often I'm doing it with kind of my neurotypical son. And the same goes for him as well. He doesn't need the question repeated over and over and over again, right? That isn't good for him either. So let's say you're talking about colors. What color is it? Silence. What color is it? Silence. What color? What color is the flower? Does that sound familiar? Maybe. And here's the thing that we need to kind of think of. If your child is not answering the question the first time, why would asking the exact same question again suddenly make it easier? It doesn't. And I'm going to put a little asterisk here. This could be a question that your child knows the answer to, right? They know what red is and they know the ball is red. So why aren't they answering the question in the moment? It could also be something that your child has said a lot of times before, right? Normally, when you say, what do you want for dinner? They say pizza every time because that is their favorite thing in the world to eat. So this could be something that they are already able to do. So you're asking that question repeatedly because you know they know the answer, right? You know they know it. So why aren't they saying it? And there's many reasons why they might be saying it. Think about that process I just talked you through, right? All of those different parts that need to be in place to answer a question. Any one of those could be tricky for your child in that moment where they're not answering your question. I want you to see it as they're not ignoring you. It's not that they don't want to answer the question. They are having a tough time with a part of that process. So you start with your original question. You ask it 2 times, maybe 3 times with those kind of big 10-second breaks. But then you just assume the question is too difficult. Not my child doesn't know it. Not they don't want to talk right now. Not they're being difficult. This question is too difficult for where their cognition is in this second. So what do? You make the question easier for them, right? We're going to assume they want to communicate with you. They want to be successful and answer these questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to scaffold that question so it's easier for your child to answer. So the first thing you might do is make it more specific. You might be reading a book with your child and you might say, oh, what do you see in the picture? What's happening in the picture? All right, pretty simple question. They might answer that question sometimes. They might know every animal, color, shape in that picture, right? You know they have a lot to talk about, but they're silent or they start talking about something else, which also happens. The first thing you can do is you're going to make that question more specific. So instead of what's in this picture, you might say, can you tell me what animal that is? And you point to it. So you've narrowed down the scope of what you're asking. Okay. They might say, that's an owl or a bird or a cat or a dog. Great. You could just move on. Or they might be silent again or talk about something else. So then what you might do is you might give a compare and contrast question. So you might say, oh, is that a owl or a cat? So in this moment, even if you know they know what an owl is, what you're doing is you are helping them to retrieve the right word. So you're not actually giving them the answer. You're helping their brain with that pathway of retrieving the right word for the picture that they're seeing. Okay. But you might say, is that an owl or a cat? And they don't give an answer. Right? You might ask that a few times. If they're still not giving an answer, even though you know they know the answer, what you're going to do is you're just going to model it and move on. Yeah, you know what? That's an owl. And you move on. Okay. The biggest piece that I want you to take away from this is it's not about proving what your child knows, like them answering the questions. It doesn't really matter if it's kind of like right all of the time. What matters the most is taking them through the process of making this language retrieval easier for them, okay? Because the easier it becomes, the more able they are going to be in showing you what they know. All right, let's jump into number 3. So, as we all know, I'm sure you guys experience it as well. Regulation is a big part of someone being able to use their body effectively and properly. We have all felt being dysregulated, especially as parents. We're probably experiencing it every single day, right? We know how it feels to be dysregulated and then still have to think, still have to perform, still have to do all of the physical tasks you have to do every day. And I don't even know if I have to ask you this, but is it easier or harder when you're dysregulated? It is so much harder. Now, let's think about an autistic child, right? They very well could be dysregulated, but then everyday tasks are already harder for them to do. Communication is already harder for them to do. So if they're feeling dysregulated in their body and these things that we're asking them to do aren't automatic innate processes for them, they are not going to be able to do them. The reason we can still perform when we're dysregulated is because we have muscle memory and we're doing a lot of things subconsciously, right? So if communication is not at a subconscious level for your child, if they're dysregulated, communication is going to go out of the window, all right? And often the most important time for your child to be able to communicate is when they're dysregulated, because that is what is going to give you the ability to support them and it's going to give them the ability to advocate for themselves. All right, so this one isn't even about language. It's not even about what you are saying or not saying to your child, okay? And we think so much about that all the time, right? What words are they saying? What words are they not saying? When are they going to have to say these words? When are they going to tell me about their day at school? Like, we think about that all the time. So now let's just take a backseat approach to the actual communication part and think about the foundation of their body, okay? Is my child's brain and body actually ready to learn today? Okay. And I say today, is their brain and body ready to listen to this question? Is their brain and body ready to talk about their day? Is their brain and body ready to sit and read a story with me? Okay. Because dysregulation isn't just a one thing that happens at one time during the day. It is like a cycle, right? If your child is tired, hungry, overstimulated, understimulated, too hot, too cold, or they've spent too much time on a screen, communication will be so much harder for them. That is just a fact until they get to a point where communication is happening on a subconscious level. So all over social media, there is so much about what you can buy to help your child regulate themselves. All right. There's swings. There's these like fancy like cube boxes things. There's all these different kind of blankets. And I am with you. I have fallen into that, and I have far too many like OT grade things in my house that I do not use. I'm wondering, do you guys use all of the things? Is there anything your child particularly loves? But there is a lot everywhere that is absolutely free, that is not only going to help your child regulate in the moment in that day, it's going to help them consistently be regulated if they're consistently kind of getting this movement, but also is going to be strengthening their body, strengthening their core, strengthening their muscles, which also helps with impulsivity and control over their body. All right, so let's think about it. Swimming outside in the summer, having a paddling pool, taking lots of baths or putting toys in the shower, going to a local swimming pool. And many swimming pools have sensory times where it's a low sensory environment with far less people there. So makes it a much more enjoyable experience sometimes for autistic children and their families. Swimming lessons as well, all about that coordination and safety in the water, which is a really, really big thing, unfortunately, for autistic children. Autistic children are drawn to water because it gives a lot of deep pressure. The water actually makes their bodies feel really, really good. So the more you can incorporate water into your child's routine, the more regulated they are going to be. Playgrounds, the neighborhood playground. If you have like a small thing in your back garden, you could build a rope swing, get like a little type slide or something. But that movement is really, really great for an autistic child to help with their regulation. Being outside is great as well. And swinging in particular really, really helps them. Bike rides, trampolines, splash pads, nature walks, climbing, swinging, digging in sand. That's just a few. And I know that making trips out the house like this can be really difficult to navigate with an autistic child. Absolutely, I'm with you. However, I ask you to kind of persevere and try and problem solve, because if you can get over these hurdles with them and make it a safe experience, then it is going to make life better for both you and them. And I don't know how to put this. And the more kind of consistent you are with those transitions, even if you get to a point where it is safe, that transition away from the playground or away from the swimming pool can be really, really tough. But the more consistent you are with it, the easier it will become. So before you do anything with your child, think about their regulation, because when they are regulated, they're more available for thinking, processing, learning, communication. All right. So if you're feeling stuck and you're not sure why your child is doing X, Y, or Z, let's just go outside. Let's go outside. Let's just do something physical. All right. So last one, number 4. And this is the one that I'm going to be honest with you. I have been known for not doing this myself. And this is probably one of the hardest ones to do as a parent. So bear with me. This is stop expecting yourself to pour from an empty cup. I've been empty probably for 5 years now, 5 years. And I just like fill it up a little bit to get my juice every day. So I'm really, really working on filling that cup up more and more. Parents of autistic children carry so much. Appointments, therapy, school meetings, research, medication, sensory struggles, sleep needs, planning every outing. I'm not talking about like, oh, right, what time are we going to catch the train? It is planning everything down to the minute detail, because you want it to be as smooth as possible for your child, right? You forget one thing and like the day just turns. You got the right cup, the right snack, the right headphones, the right toy. People don't realize how many decisions you make before you've even left the house, but also like how big those decisions, right? Just a small little decision about like, which cup should I bring? How big those decisions are within the scope of your day. And then I'm not even going to talk that much about it, but then that kind of mental load of just worry about the future, about school, about friends, about other kids in the playground, like that worry is something very, very specific to parents of children with struggles like this. So when I say self-care, I am not going to be talking to you right now about, oh, just book yourself a weekend at the beach. What about that new spa that opened up down the road? I'm talking about survival, how to put a little bit in your cup. Remember I said, I don't have a full cup. I just put a little bit in, right? How can you survive these days right now until it gets easier? Okay. So maybe today looks like giving yourself permission to not cook dinner, but just to do frozen pizzas. Maybe today looks like, you know what? I'm just going to take 2 minutes to go through this drive-through and get me a coffee because I just need to do one small thing for myself. Maybe it looks like ignoring the washing that's piling up over the weekend so that you just have a minute where you're not rushing from one thing to the next. Maybe it looks like asking your partner to do bedtime, or if you are stuck with bedtime, like many of us are, because of very, very specific things, asking them to do parts of it. Can you find the pajamas, shut the door, shut the curtains, get the toothbrushes ready, or whatever that looks like? Maybe it's just saying no. Maybe it's saying no to that family event on a Sunday because you know it exhausts your child, and then Monday and Tuesday before school is really hard. All of these are examples of self-care that is not Instagram worthy at all, but can make very small but significant changes to that mental load that you have throughout the day. Because here is what I've learned. When I'm dysregulated, I'm less patient. I'm like faster. Not only do I talk faster, I walk faster. I'm rushing around. I forget to wait. I repeat myself, and I'm not just repeating myself calmly sometimes. Sometimes I'm getting agitated, and I become sometimes exactly the communicator that I am telling parents not to become. Because when your body is dysregulated and tired and just empty in survival mode, it is so hard just to keep up with the day to day. And that's okay. We're human and we're all walking like one of the most challenging journeys. And that goal is not perfection. It's awareness. It's slowing down, and it's just doing little things that are going to hopefully add up over time to make a bigger difference. So if I could ask you to just change 4 habits without investing any money, without having to go out and do anything, 4 habits that you can just change right here, right now, with a little bit of consistency and intention. It's talk less, wait a little longer, make your questions easier instead of repeating them, and prioritize that regulation for your child, but also for yourself. And I genuinely believe that these habit changes will make a much bigger difference than buying another educational toy or printing another worksheet. They're going to change the way in which your house feels. They're going to change the foundation of communication in your house. And hopefully everyone starts feeling a little bit more grounded. So if this video was helpful, I'd love to know which of these 4 habits you are going to focus on first. Leave me a comment below. I read every single one. I love connecting with you guys, and they also help me to decide like what is going to be helpful for you all. And if you enjoyed this video, I know you're going to love the next one, because the next one is talking about habits that you should start doing. And you should start doing these if you have the goal of your autistic child communicating more. And these 4 habits will help you to develop the skills to help your autistic child communicate more and answer questions. And once you understand it, you'll never see the question of how was school today in the same way again. Thank you so much for being here. If you're new, I'm Eloise. I've spent the last 15 years helping autistic children build communication through the foundations of thinking, processing, and connection. And my goal is to give you practical strategies you can use immediately in everyday life at home. So I'll see you in the next video.